Prescriptions and Passenger Seats. Chapter 1. The Rainy Ride. Rain slicked the Manhattan streets in silver, turning the city into a blur of lights and reflections. The thunder had started an hour ago, low and lazy, like the growl of a walking beast. Dr. Eliza Monroe stood beneath the awning of St. Gabriel's Hospital, tapping her phone with clinical impatience. Her usual car service had cancelled. The subway was flooded, and her heels, practical but still too expensive to ruin, were soaked. With a frustrated sigh, she ordered an Uber. A black sedan pulled up 5 minutes later, headlights cutting through the sheets of rain. The driver didn't speak when she slid into the back seat, soaked umbrella in hand. Just a quiet nod through the rearview mirror and a calm, "Evening, ma'am." She noticed his voice first, low, steady, warm, like the inside of a worn leather book. The silence stretched, but not uncomfortably. Eliza leaned her head back, trying to shake off the tension of 12 straight hours in the ER. Her fingers found the stethoscope, still slung around her neck, and in a moment of exhaustion, it slipped from her lap onto the floor. The driver caught the sound. "You're a doctor?" he asked, glancing at her through the mirror. "Surgeon," she corrected softly, bending down to retrieve it. Their eyes met briefly, and something unspoken passed between them. Not a spark, not yet, but the weight of two lives more tired than they let on. He hesitated before continuing. "My daughter wants to be a doctor. She's 5, thinks Band-Aids fix everything." Eliza smiled in spite of herself. She's not wrong. The next few blocks passed more quickly. The city blurred outside, but inside the car, the atmosphere had shifted. It wasn't flirting, not exactly, just two strangers sharing something gentle in the middle of a storm. "I'm Luca," he said when they reached her building. "Eliza," she replied. They paused. Stethoscope in hand, she added, "Thank you for the ride." He nodded, and for a second, neither of them moved. She stepped out into the rain without opening her umbrella. The door shut softly behind her. From the rearview mirror, Luca watched as she disappeared into the marble lobby. A woman built of glass and steel, and something he couldn't yet name. He didn't know why he hoped she'd book another ride. He just knew he'd remember her name. Chapter 2. Repeat Encounters. The city didn't sleep, but it had a funny way of repeating itself. Eliza Monroe saw him again, 3 days later, not on a ride, but parked across the street from her favorite espresso bar, head bent as he scribbled something into a dog-eared notebook. Luca Reyes. She knew his name now, had repeated it once or twice under her breath without meaning to. She told herself it was coincidence, until she saw him again. This time, it was outside the hospital. She was going out with her headphones in, mentally going over patient rounds, when a car horn chirped gently behind her. She turned. Same black sedan, same quiet eyes. He looked surprised too, like he hadn't planned it, though part of her doubted that. "Eliza," he greeted, voice just above the city hum. "Twice in a week. Should I be worried?" she said lightly. He smiled. "Maybe the city's smaller than we think." It was easier to believe that. It was easier not to think about why the sight of him made her pulse thrum just a little bit faster, or why she remembered the exact shape of his voice. That evening, she walked into a deli on 73rd and spotted him again, this time carrying a bag of groceries and holding Sophia's tiny hand. The little girl had a paint-splattered backpack and a mismatched coat, and her face lit up when she saw Luca crouch down to tie her shoe. Eliza didn't approach him. She stayed behind the fridge, hidden between kombucha bottles and cold brew, watching the way he gently brushed Sophia's curls from her face as they talked about peanut butter. She left without buying anything. Later that night, she stared at her ceiling, wondering why she couldn't get them out of her head. Across the city, In a worn-down apartment, Luca tucked Sophia into bed. He stepped outside into the hallway and pulled out his phone. The Uber app was still open, her name last on the list. He hovered over the favorite rider option. He didn't tap it, but he didn't close it either. Chapter 3. A Sick Little Girl. The message came in just past midnight. Short, hesitant. Hi, this is Luca. I know it's late. Sophia's not feeling well. I don't know who else to call. Eliza sat up in bed, rubbing the sleep from her eyes. Her thumb hovered over the screen. She could hear her mentor's voice in her head. Don't get personally involved. Draw the line. But it wasn't that simple. It hadn't been since the rain. She replied before she could overthink it. Send me your address. I'm coming. 20 minutes later, she stood outside a cracked apartment door in a run-down building in the Bronx, holding her medical bag. The hallway reeked of mildew and forgotten dinners, but the second the door opened, everything else faded. Luca looked worse than she expected. Dark circles under his eyes, jaw clenched, shirt wrinkled. I'm sorry, he murmured. She started coughing an hour ago. Fever's high. She's never been this sick. Inside, the apartment was clean but sparse. A single couch, a folded blanket on the floor, a couple of framed crayon drawings taped to the wall. Sophia lay curled on the couch, cheeks flushed, her small chest rising and falling too quickly. Eliza knelt beside her without a word, instinct taking over. Gentle hands, cool touch, calm voice. Hey, sweetheart, she whispered. I'm Dr. Eliza. Can I take a look? Sophia nodded, weakly. Luca watched from the corner, arms folded across his chest, helpless and ashamed. I should have taken her to urgent care, but the copay... I couldn't. You did the right thing, Eliza cut in, not looking up. You called me. She checked vitals, listened to Sophia's lungs, inflamed but not alarming, likely a viral infection, not pneumonia. With the right care, she'd recover. I'll get her something mild to bring the fever down, Eliza said, finally glancing at Luca, and she needs fluids, rest, maybe a few cartoons. She likes animal shows, Luca added quietly, especially penguins. Eliza smiled. I like penguins too. By the time she finished writing instructions on a notepad, Sophia was already asleep again, her tiny fingers loosely wrapped around Eliza's stethoscope. She likes you, Luca said from the doorway. I like her too, Eliza stood. She's tough. She gets it from her mom, he replied, voice tight. It was the first time he'd mentioned her. Eliza didn't push. Instead, she took a breath and asked, How are you holding up? He looked at her then, really looked, and whatever walls he'd built to survive were beginning to crumble, brick by brick. I'm not, he said honestly. Not really. Eliza wanted to reach for his hand, to offer something more than medicine, but instead she nodded once, professional but soft. I'm just a call away, she said, turning to leave. Luca watched her go, not stopping her, not yet. But when the door closed behind her, he let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. For the first time in a long time, he didn't feel completely alone. Chapter 4. The Invitation. The next time Eliza saw Luca, it wasn't in a car or a hallway. It was through a text message. Sophia's birthday is Saturday. Just us. Nothing fancy. But she keeps asking if the doctor with the penguin stories will come. Eliza smiled before she even finished reading it. She didn't tell anyone at the hospital where she was going that weekend. She dressed down. Jeans, sweater, hair pulled back into a loose braid. She didn't bring a gift at first, then circled back to a bookstore and picked out a pop-up book on ocean animals. Luca's building looked no better in daylight. Chipped paint, rusted rails, but inside apartment 3B, the warmth was undeniable. Balloons in pastel pink and sky blue floated lazily across the ceiling. A paper "Happy 6th birthday, Sophia" banner sagged over the doorway. The smell of vanilla cupcakes filled the air. Sophia spotted Eliza from across the room and gasped. "You came!" she shrieked, running over in socked feet and throwing her arms around Eliza's waist. Eliza knelt down, offering the book. "For the birthday, girl." Luca stepped in from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a dish towel, eyes bright with something more than just gratitude. "You didn't have to come," he said, voice lower now, almost shy. "She asked," Eliza replied, her gaze lingering. There were only a handful of guests, a neighbour with twin toddlers, an elderly woman from the floor below who brought store-bought cookies, and a lanky teenager who played Sophia's favourite cartoon on a tablet. Eliza found herself sitting cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by children and stuffed animals, reading the book aloud as Sophia gasped at every pop-up. Every time she turned a page, she'd glance up and catch Luca watching her, a look of quiet awe, like she wasn't just reading a book, but stitching something whole in the middle of his fragmented life. Then, the doorbell rang. Luca tensed before he even opened it. A woman stood on the threshold in stilettos, sunglasses pushed into her hair, perfume trailing in behind her. "Delilah," Luca muttered under his breath. "What are you doing here?" Sophia shrank back, clutching Eliza's sleeve. "Family should be here on birthdays," Delilah replied sharply, eyeing Eliza like she was something left out on account of her too long. "Who's the new babysitter?" "I'm her doctor," Eliza said, rising slowly. Delilah scoffed. "Sure you are." The tension was immediate, electric. Eliza noticed the way Luca's jaw clenched, how his hand protectively brushed Sophia's shoulder. Delilah kept talking about custody, missed calls, and proper environments. Eliza didn't catch every word, but she didn't need to. Sophia began to cry. "I think it's time you left," Luca said, voice like steel under velvet. Delilah muttered something under her breath and stormed out, heels echoing across the hall. The room fell quiet. Eliza reached for Sophia, cradling her gently. "Hey, I've still got one more story in me if you want." Luca watched them from the hallway, heart in his throat. Later, when the guests had gone and the candles were cleaned up, Luca walked Eliza to the door. "I'm sorry about that," he said. "You don't have to be." She hesitated, then looked up. "You're doing more than most ever could." Luca stepped closer, not touching her, just standing near enough for her to feel the warmth of him. "I'm glad you came," he said. "Me too," Eliza whispered, then turned and walked into the night, heart full, mind spinning, unaware of just how much that one small party had changed everything. Chapter 5. Unmasked. The hospital cafeteria buzzed with lunchtime chatter, the clatter of trays, the low hum of gossip, and the ever-present scent of burnt coffee. Eliza stood in line for a salad she wasn't hungry for, scrolling absent-mindedly through her messages, when she heard it. "So, who's the guy?" "Which guy?" "The one she's been sneaking off to see. Definitely not a resident. I heard he drives Uber." Total scandal. Eliza didn't turn around. She didn't have to. Her colleagues always whispered just loud enough to be heard. By the time she returned to her office, she could feel the eyes on her. And yet, instead of irritation, there was something else humming beneath her skin. Defiance. For once, the person she was being judged for wasn't someone with a title, a trust fund, or a tailored white coat. It was someone real. That night, she saw Luca again, this time on purpose. She waited by the corner bodega near his apartment, umbrella in hand. When he pulled up, she slid into the front seat. "No hospital coat today," he said with a sideways glance. "I'm off duty," she replied. They drove, with no destination in mind, the windows fogged up as the city lights smeared into watercolor. Eventually, they parked by the East River, where the skyline glittered like shattered glass. He didn't ask why she wanted to see him. Instead, they talked. About Sophia, about his favourite childhood book, about the best coffee in Queens. Then, out of nowhere, Eliza asked, "So, why did you really drop out of med school?" Luca went quiet. "I looked you up," she said, gently. "Luca Reyes, pre-med at NYU, academic scholarship, top of your class. Then nothing." He stared ahead, fingers tightening on the steering wheel. "My dad got sick. Real bad. Cancer. I took time off to help. Then my mom left. I had to pick up work. Classes slipped. Loans piled up. I couldn't keep up. The school didn't exactly beg me to stay." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. I've made peace with it. Kind of." He finally looked at her. "It's just weird, seeing someone who actually made it. You've got the life I used to dream about." "It's not perfect," Eliza murmured. "No," he said, softer now, "but it's yours." A moment passed between them, tender and heavy. Outside, the rain had started again, tapping against the windshield like it was trying to remind them of something, or maybe trying to wash something clean. Back at the hospital, the rumours thickened. A nurse caught Eliza staring at her phone between surgeries, smiling at a text that simply read, "Sophia says penguins waddle like you walk in heels." The truth was out now, or at least pieces of it, but Eliza didn't care. Luca wasn't a scandal. He was a second chance. Chapter 6. Lines in the Sand. The boardroom at St. Gabriel's felt colder than usual. Too much glass, too much white, too little warmth. Eliza stood across from Dr. Bennett Crane, her former fiancé and current superior, who leaned against the long table with the same smug calm he used during surgeries. But today there was no scalpel in his hand, just a manila folder and a bitter smile. "So it's true," he said, flipping open the folder. "You're seeing him." Eliza didn't answer. She didn't have to. Her silence spoke louder than any denial. "A rideshare driver?" he continued. "Eliza, come on. He's not even, what, educated? Stable? He's human, Bennett. That still counts for something." Bennett pushed off the table and took a slow step toward her. "You're risking everything. Do you have any idea what this looks like to the board, to our donors? You've worked your entire life to be taken seriously, and now you're throwing it away for—" "Don't," she snapped, her voice low but sharp. "Don't talk to me about sacrifice. I've bled for this career. I've spent birthdays alone, missed funerals, worked 70-hour weeks just to prove that I belong, and now I finally feel something real, something honest, and you just want to make it a scandal." "It's beneath you," he said, more gently this time, which somehow felt worse. "And you know it." A beat of silence. Then she said, evenly, "Maybe it's not about what's beneath me. Maybe it's about what lifts me up." Bennett's jaw tightened. "I'm warning you, Eliza. If this goes public, the board won't protect you, and I won't either." She met his gaze, unflinching, steady. "Then I guess I'll have to protect myself." She turned and walked out, heels echoing down the corridor like gunshots. That night she didn't call Luca. She needed time to breathe, to think, but he felt the shift anyway. When she finally showed up at his apartment 2 days later, her smile was different, brittle at the edges. She helped Sophia with homework, listened to penguin facts, ate leftover pasta with them on the couch, but when Luca reached for her hand, she gently pulled away. "What's wrong?" he asked. "I just—" She looked down at her plate. "I need space. Things at work are getting complicated." "Because of me?" "No, because of them." "But you're pushing me away." She didn't answer. She couldn't. Luca rose from the couch and began gathering the dishes in silence, the clatter of ceramic in the sink, the only sound between them. She left quietly that night. No kiss, no promise to return. For the first time since the rainy ride, the silence between them didn't feel comforting. It felt like a door, slowly closing. Chapter 7. Past Due. The notice came in a plain white envelope, taped to the peeling doorframe with more indifference than warning. Final notice. Eviction in 10 days. Luca stared at the paper, breath caught in his chest. Sophia's laughter echoing from inside as she played with her stuffed animals. He pulled the letter down slowly, folding it with quiet precision, like that could somehow make it less real. Rent had been late 3 times. He was already behind on utilities. Driving all night barely covered food and gas, let alone the backlog piling like snowdrifts behind every locked account. And now, the worst had arrived, in black ink and legal language. That evening, he sat on the edge of his worn mattress while Sophia coloured beside him. She asked if they could decorate for Halloween. He smiled, nodded, and promised they'd figure something out. But he had no plan. He scrolled through the Uber app, accepting every ride offered. The city blurred into taillights and strangers, drunken tourists, impatient businessmen, women who clutched their bags tighter when they saw his face. By midnight, the rides dried up. Then, just as he was about to log off, a ride request came in, flagged with a $triple sign and marked cash bonus, no questions asked. It was in Queens, late night pickup. Luca hesitated, but then tapped accept. The man who got into the car wore a suit 2 sizes too small and cologne 2 strengths too strong. He gave an address, a strip club in the Bronx, and said nothing else. Halfway there, he changed the destination. Actually, pull into this lot. Luca's instinct screamed, but he needed the cash. Minutes later, a second man approached the car, loud, aggressive, slurring threats at the passenger. They argued, loudly. Then fists flew. The back door flew open. Luca jumped out, trying to separate them, until one of them swung at him. He didn't remember hitting the pavement, just the sting of gravel and the rush of blood from his split brow. By the time it was over, the police had been called. The other men vanished into the night. Luca refused medical attention and drove himself home with one eye half shut, blood crusted on his temple. When he stepped into the apartment, Sophia was asleep, on the couch, cartoon still playing on mute. He stumbled into the bathroom and looked in the mirror. A swollen cheekbone, bruised lip, shame darkening his eyes more than any fist ever could. He didn't know what scared him more, the fact that he could have died tonight, or that no one would have known until Sophia didn't show up at school the next morning. He splashed cold water on his face and whispered to his reflection, "Hold on, just a little longer." Chapter 8. Breaking Point. The knock on his door came just after sunrise. 3 sharp raps that made Luca flinch. He opened it slowly, expecting the landlord, maybe a final threat, maybe worse. But it was Eliza. She stood in dark jeans and a sweatshirt, her eyes wide with concern the moment she saw his face. "What the hell happened to you?" she breathed. He stepped back silently, letting her in. She didn't wait for permission, just marched past him, scanned his bruised face, the busted knuckles, the cracked phone screen on the floor. "Luca, I'm fine." "No, you're not," she snapped, already rummaging through her bag for gloves and gauze. "Sit." He obeyed without hesitation, without resistance. The silence thick between them. Her hands were gentle, efficient, but her eyes were fire. Was it a passenger? Luca didn't answer. Was it money? Still silence. "Damn it, Luca, talk to me," she cried, slamming the bottle of antiseptic down onto the counter. "You don't get to go out there getting your face bashed in like it's nothing. Not when Sophia needs you. Not when—" Her voice broke. "Not when I—" He stood suddenly. Don't do that." "Do what?" "Care like that. Act like I met her, when we both know this was never going to last." She blinked, caught off guard. I drive strangers around for cash, Eliza. I pick up drunks. I patch holes in the ceiling with duct tape. I can't even keep the lights on some weeks. And you live in a world where everything is clean and bright and planned. I'm not part of your life. I'm a detour. Her voice was barely above a whisper. You're not a detour. You're the only part that's ever felt real. He shook his head. You say that now, but when your license is on the line, when your boss threatens your future, when people start calling you reckless and irresponsible, I know how this ends. She stared at him, heart pounding in her ears. You're scared, she said quietly. Of course I'm scared, he snapped. Scared of hoping, scared of screwing this up, scared of you waking up one day and realize I was just a break from your perfect life. You think my life is perfect? I think it was, before me. A long silence. Then she turned, grabbing her bag and walking towards the door. But before she opened it, she paused. You're wrong, Luca. My life was empty before you. She left before he could answer. That night, Eliza didn't return to her apartment. She accepted a dinner invitation from Bennett, not because she missed him, but because she couldn't bear to be alone with the ache in her chest. Over wine and dim lighting, Bennett smiled too easily, talked too much, touched her hand just a second too long, and Eliza let him. Not because she wanted him back, but because she wanted to forget how much she had to lose. Chapter 9. The Fire. Smoke curled into the sky like a warning. Dark, thick, relentless. Eliza was halfway through her shift when the news alert buzzed on her phone. Fire breaks out in Bronx apartment building. Residents evacuated. Multiple injuries reported. She didn't know why her heart seized the way it did. She didn't know how she recognized the building from the photo. But her hands were trembling as she dialed Luca's number. No answer. She tried again. Still nothing. Within minutes, she was in her car, racing through red lights with sirens echoing in her mind. The moment she arrived, chaos met her like a tidal wave. Fire trucks, ambulances, shouts, the acrid scent of smoke thick in her lungs. She found him sitting on the curb, a soot-streaked blanket across his shoulders, holding Sophia on his lap. Eliza ran towards them, breathless. Luca! Oh my God! Sophia! We're okay, he said, voice hoarse. We got out in time. Apartment's gone. Sophia looked up at her, eyes glassy from tears and smoke. My penguin book's gone too, she whispered. Eliza crouched beside her and pulled both of them into her arms. We'll get you another one, she promised, burying her face in Sophia's hair. Luca didn't cry. He didn't say much of anything. He just sat there, still and silent, as if trying to absorb the fact that everything they owned, every crayon drawing, every blanket, every dollar tucked away in the kitchen drawer, was now ash. An hour later, she brought them to her apartment. She gave Sophia her bedroom, fluffed pillows, warm pajamas, a fuzzy bear from the guest closet. She tucked her in and stayed until her breathing softened into sleep. Then she found Luca standing on her balcony, backlit by the city, smoke-stained shirt clinging to him like a second skin. I'm sorry, he said, without turning round. I don't have anywhere else to go. You don't have to apologize. I shouldn't be here. But you are. He turned to face her, shadows under his eyes. Eliza, this isn't your problem. Luca, you and Sophia. She hesitated, then stepped closer. You're not a problem. You're part of my life. You have been for a while now. His throat bobbed. I don't want your pity. It's not pity, she said. It's something else. The distance between them evaporated. She reached up, touching the bruise on his jaw, her fingertips soft, deliberate. You scare me, he admitted. Because I see you? She asked. He nodded. Good, she whispered. Because you scare me too. The kiss came slow, tender, unspoken, the kind that said, I'm here, the kind that tasted like smoke and salt and promises neither of them knew how to make, but felt anyway. Later, when they fell asleep on the couch, tangled in blankets and breath, Eliza didn't think about the hospital, or Bennett, or what the morning would bring. She only thought about how, for the first time in years, the silence felt like home. Chapter 10. Closer. Sunlight streamed through the blinds, casting long stripes across the living room floor. Luca stirred first, walking to the unfamiliar softness of Eliza's couch and the scent of coffee brewing nearby. He blinked slowly, heart thudding as he realized where he was, not just physically, but emotionally. He hadn't just crossed a threshold last night. He'd stepped into something irreversible. In the kitchen, Eliza moved with quiet purpose, barefoot, hair still tousled from sleep. She poured 2 mugs, glanced back, and smiled when she saw him awake. "Coffee?" she asked. "God, yes," he said, sitting up. She handed him a mug and joined him on the couch, their knees touching, their silence easy now. Sophia padded into the room moments later, wearing one of Eliza's t-shirts like a nightgown. "Morning," she mumbled, climbing into Luca's lap. "Morning, baby," he whispered, kissing her forehead. Eliza reached for the remote. "How do you two feel about penguins before breakfast?" Sophia's face lit up. The day unfolded gently. Eliza made pancakes, the kind that stuck to the pan and came out uneven, but no one complained. Luca helped her fix a loose cabinet door. Sophia built a zoo out of books and pillows. It was domestic in a way none of them were used to, but none of them wanted to leave. That night, after Sophia had fallen asleep with her head on Luca's shoulder, Eliza whispered, "She can stay here until we figure something else out." He looked at her, stunned. "You'd do that?" "I already have." She set Sophia down gently on the guest bed, pulled the covers up, and kissed her cheek before returning to the living room. Eliza stood waiting, arms crossed, leaning against the wall like she'd been thinking hard. "She asked if I was your girlfriend," she said softly. Luca tilted his head. "What did you tell her?" "I said I don't know yet." He took a step closer. "Want to figure it out?" "I think I do." There was no lightning bolt moment, no sweeping orchestral score, just quiet certainty as he cupped her cheek and kissed her, this time without urgency, without fear. It was a kiss built on sleepless nights, shared burdens, and slow blooming trust. They didn't sleep apart that night. Wrapped around each other in the dark, the unspoken began to form into something real. Eliza traced the scars on his hands. Luca memorized the curve of her spine, and just before sleep claimed them. He whispered, "You're too good for me." And she answered, "No, Luca, I'm exactly where I'm meant to be." In the stillness that followed, the knock on the door came like a gunshot, heavy, measured. Luca sat up, heart pounding. "Eliza Monroe?" a voice called from the hallway. "NYPD, we need to speak with you." She opened the door in a robe, confusion etched across her face. The officer didn't look at her. He looked at Luca. "Luca Reyes, you're under arrest for assault and battery. Hands where I can see them." Eliza froze. Luca's eyes went wide. Sophia stirred in the next room, and in a single breath, the world they'd started to build collapsed like a house of cards. Chapter 11. The Setup. The cold metal of the handcuffs bit into Luca's wrists as the officers guided him out of Eliza's apartment. Sophia's voice echoed from the hallway, panicked and high-pitched. "Daddy? Daddy? Where are you going?" "Stay with her," he shouted over his shoulder, locking eyes with Eliza. "Don't let her see me like this, please." Eliza scooped Sophia into her arms, her heart shattering as they watched him disappear into the elevator. Her fingers trembled, brushing Sophia's curls as the little girl cried against her chest. At the station, Luca sat beneath flickering fluorescent lights while an officer slid a file across the table. "Victim claims you punched him during a rideshare dispute last week. Says you dragged him from the car." Luca stared at the photo. The man was familiar. The same drunk passenger from the lot in Queens. "That's not what happened," Luca said, through clenched teeth. He was already fighting someone when I arrived. I tried to break it up. Do you have dashcam footage? Luca blinked. I had it, but my car was broken into the day after. How convenient. The officer leaned back, crossing his arms. Back in Eliza's apartment, she sat at her laptop with fire in her chest. This wasn't just bad luck. It was too precise, too timed. Her instincts as a doctor, sharp, methodical, clicked into place. She called Claire, her closest nurse and confidant. I need your help, she whispered. Something's off. I think someone's framing Luca. Within an hour, Claire was in Eliza's apartment, laptop open, fingers flying across the keyboard. They hacked into Luca's Uber profile, pulling location logs and timestamps. Claire accessed the cloud backup from his dashcam app. What are we looking for? She asked. A ghost, Eliza muttered. Someone who wanted him out of the picture. It took hours, but they found it. A backup clip auto-uploaded seconds before the dashcam was stolen. It showed the drunk man arguing with another figure, one who never entered the car. Claire squinted. Pause. Zoom. That coat. I've seen that coat. Eliza's heart dropped into her stomach. She knew the coat. Navy blue, camel collar, monogrammed cufflinks. Bennett. She didn't want to believe it, but something cold and sharp settled behind her ribs. Claire stared at her. He set up Luca, didn't he? Eliza stood, breath ragged. He knew Luca was staying with me. He knew Sophia was here. He knew exactly when to strike. You need to confront him. Eliza's hands curled into fists. No, I need to take him down. The next morning, she walked into Bennett's office, unannounced. He was mid-conversation with a colleague when he saw her, hair pinned back, eyes blazing, a folder clutched tight in her hand. Eliza, he said smoothly, didn't expect you today. She dropped the folder onto his desk. Then let me surprise you. Inside, the timestamps, dashcam stills, audio transcriptions, evidence. His expression didn't falter. I hope you realize what you're doing. I do, she said. I'm choosing him. He leaned forward, voice dropping to a hiss. You're throwing your career away for a street rat. She leaned in closer. No, I'm burning your web down, one lie at a time. Then she turned to leave. He called after her. You'll regret this. But Eliza didn't stop. She didn't flinch. She had one mission now, to clear Luca's name and bring down the man who tried to ruin them both. Chapter 12. Doctor's Orders. Eliza sat in her office, blinds drawn, heart pounding against her ribcage like a war drum. On her desk was a copy of the hospital's ethics policy, next to the page about unapproved patient treatment. Next to it, a flash drive containing the backup dashcam footage. The choice was clear: her career or Luca's freedom. She reached for the phone. Claire, meet me in records. We're going all in. Downstairs, in the hospital archives, Claire handed her a sealed envelope. This has everything. Luca's GPS logs, the backup footage, the timestamps matching Bennett's schedule the night of the supposed assault. It proves that Luca didn't touch that guy. Eliza exhaled slowly. I'm testifying. Claire stared at her. You realize what Bennett will do when he finds out. Let him come, Eliza said. I've stayed silent long enough. Hours later, Eliza marched into the courthouse, hair pulled tight, heels sharp against the marble. The courtroom was packed. Luca, pale but composed in a borrowed blazer, sat beside a wary public defender. Sophia was with Claire in the back row, clutching a stuffed penguin. When Eliza took the stand, the courtroom hushed. She testified about Luca's character, about his devotion to Sophia, about the night of the fire, the night he was arrested, and the inconsistencies in the report. Then she dropped the real bomb. The footage was erased from the car, but a cloud backup survived. One that shows a second individual approaching the car and instigating the confrontation. That man was never named in the report, and that man was Dr. Bennett Crane. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. The prosecutor frowned. Dr. Monroe, are you implying Dr. Crane tampered with evidence to frame Mr. Reyes? Yes, Eliza said, steel in her voice, because I was involved with Mr. Reyes and Bennett wanted him out of the picture. The judge raised an eyebrow. Dr. Monroe, were you not also in violation of medical ethics when you treated Mr. Reyes' daughter off record, without proper clearance or documentation? Eliza hesitated. Her pulse raced. The whole room seemed to shrink around her. I was, she said clearly. I knowingly treated Sophia Reyes without charting the visit because she was sick and had no insurance. It was the wrong protocol, but the right thing to do. I shall accept the consequences. Luca sat forward, stunned. Across the room, Bennett's attorney leaned over to whisper something, but it was too late. The judge called for a recess. In the hallway, Luca caught up to Eliza, who grabbed her hand. You didn't have to do that, he said. Risk your career, your reputation. I know, she whispered, but I love you, and no one gets to destroy you and walk away. He looked at her like she was a miracle, then pulled her into his arms and kissed her, not with desperation, but with fierce gratitude, like she'd become the air in his lungs. But as they embraced, Eliza's phone buzzed in her pocket. It was a message from the hospital board. Subject: immediate suspension pending review. She closed her eyes. The price had just been paid. Chapter 13. The Courtroom. The final day of the trial dawned grey and heavy, the courthouse sitting beneath a thick quilt of clouds, as if the sky itself held its breath. Inside, the air buzzed with anticipation. The press, hospital colleagues, and even a few of Bennett's private investors sat in the gallery, waiting for a scandal to unfold. Luca straightened his jacket at the defense table, jaw set, eyes searching the crowd until they landed on Sophia, seated between Claire and Eliza. Eliza gave him the smallest nod, a quiet promise. I believe in you. I'm not leaving. The prosecution gave their closing argument first, painting Luca as unstable and aggressive. A man pushed too far, under pressure, desperate, the DA said. He lashed out. It's textbook. The public defender rose, visibly younger and less polished, but with something real in his voice. This isn't just a man on trial, he began. This is a system on trial. A system that punishes poverty, that turns a struggling father into a suspect before hearing his truth. Then Eliza was called again. Her testimony was firmer now, unshakable. She spoke of Luca's integrity, the way he sacrificed sleep and health for his daughter. She detailed how Bennett had motive, opportunity, and how the surveillance footage proved that Luca had been set up. And why? The prosecutor asked. Why would Dr. Crane go to such lengths? Eliza held the jury's gaze. Because I chose Luca, and Bennett couldn't stand to lose control. A hush fell. Just as the judge was preparing to close the hearing, a figure stood at the back of the room. I need to testify, the man said, stepping forward. He wore a cheap suit and guilt like a second skin. I was the passenger that night. The guy who got hit, he paid me to say Luca started that fight. Told me I'd get a payout if I kept my mouth shut. But I can't. I can't keep lying. Gasps scattered across the room. The judge called for an immediate sidebar. 15 minutes later, she returned to her seat and glanced towards Luca. In light of the new testimony and presented evidence, all charges against Mr. Reyes are dropped. Sophia squealed, launching into Claire's lap. Eliza exhaled, for what felt like the first time in days. Luca sat frozen for a moment, then buried his face in his hands, overcome. After the ruling, Eliza stepped outside, to find Bennett waiting in the corridor, arms folded, eyes cold. "You think you've won," he said. "I didn't come here to win. I came here to stop you." "You'll lose everything," he said. "Your job, your future." "Maybe," she replied, "but I'll still have a life, one I'm proud of." He said nothing. He just walked away, his empire beginning to crack. That evening, Luca returned home, or rather, to Eliza's home, where Sophia had already drawn a sign for his bedroom door. "Daddy's safe now," in bold purple crayon. Eliza met him in the hallway, brushing a thumb along the still faint bruise on his jaw. "You're free," she said. He looked at her with raw emotion. "Because of you." She shook her head. "Because you never stopped fighting." And then, in the quiet of that night, they held each other, no longer haunted by what might have been, but finally basking in what had been given back. Chapter 14. The Offer. A week after the trial, the hospital board reached their verdict. Eliza sat in her chair, the letter heavy in her hands. Her license remained intact for now, but her suspension was indefinite. The phrase, "pending further review," repeated like a curse. Her access to patient files was revoked, her badge deactivated, her name removed from the ER rotation board overnight. She packed her things in silence. Claire offered to help, but Eliza shook her head. "I need to do this myself." Outside the hospital, she stood beneath the St. Gabriel's plaque, her reflection faint in the polished glass. For the first time in years, she wasn't Dr. Monroe, she was just Eliza. When she arrived home, Luca was cooking. Actual cooking. Garlic, onions, something hearty. Sophia was dancing in mismatched socks, a paper crown on her head. Eliza dropped her bag by the floor and watched them from the hall. She didn't speak until Luca looked up and read her expression, like a chart. "It's over," she said. "They're not firing me yet, but they've benched me." He wiped his hands on a dish towel and walked to her slowly, worry etched deep into his features. "I'm sorry, Eliza." "No, I'm not," she said. Her voice cracked. "I'm angry. I'm scared. But I'm not sorry. I'd do it again." He held her then, arms wrapping around her like armor. "You're not alone anymore." That night, after Sophia had gone to bed, a knock came at their door. A man in a grey suit, mid-40s, introducing himself as Charles Easton, a representative from a non-profit foundation. "We've been following Mr. Ray's case," he said, handing Luca a letter. "Someone made a donation in your name, anonymously. It's a full scholarship offer to return to NYU Medical, starting next semester. Full tuition, supplies, even housing." Luca stood frozen. "I'm sorry. This has to be a mistake," he said. "I didn't even apply." Charles smiled. "The university has been watching your story. They called it a redemption narrative. All they need is your answer." After Charles left, Luca sat on the edge of the couch, letter in hand, heart racing. "I don't deserve this," he whispered. "Yes, you do," Eliza said, kneeling in front of him. "You never stopped being a doctor. You just stopped believing you could be one." "I haven't been in a classroom in years. I'd be the oldest student, the only one with a kid. And I'd be starting from scratch." "But you wouldn't be starting alone." He looked at her, the vulnerability in his eyes raw and unguarded. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure of you," she said. "The rest, we'll figure out." They held hands in silence for a long time. Hope, slow and cautious, began to stir between them. Upstairs, Sophia's voice called sleepily, "Daddy, are you going to be a penguin doctor now?" He smiled through the tears and shouted back, "Maybe, kiddo. Maybe I'll be the best one ever." And in the night, while the world moved on outside their window, Luca Reyes allowed himself to dream again, this time with a future built not on fear or survival, but on love. Chapter 15. The Prescription. Spring bloomed over the Bronx like a long-held breath finally released. Trees blushed with pink blossoms, sidewalks teemed with life, and laughter echoed off brownstone walls. But for Eliza Monroe and Luca Reyes, it was more than a change in season. It was the beginning of everything. The new free clinic stood on the corner of 148th and Willis, nestled between a shuttered bakery and a schoolyard filled with bouncing basketballs. The sign above the door read, "The Monroe Reyes Community Health Center." Simple, proud, earned. Inside, the waiting room buzzed with low conversation, the scent of fresh paint still lingering beneath antiseptic. Luca, now in scrubs for the first time in years, stood beside Eliza at the intake counter, reviewing patient charts with the quiet confidence of someone who had finally come home. "You nervous?" she asked, nudging his shoulder. "Terrified," he admitted, grinning, but in a good way. They moved through the clinic like two halves of a whole. Luca stitched a cut on a little boy's hand while Eliza comforted the mother. Eliza diagnosed an elderly woman's chronic cough while Luca translated her Spanish with soft patience. Every glance, every touch, every word between them felt like a vow spoken without ceremony. In the afternoon lull, Luca pulled Eliza aside into the small staff lounge. The hum of the city was faint through the window. "I was going to wait," he said, pulling something from his pocket, "but there's never been anything traditional about us." Eliza stared. In his hand was a simple ring box, cardboard, homemade, coloured in purple crayon and glitter glue, Sophia's handiwork. "She wanted to be part of it," he said, smiling. "She told me, if you're going to ask her to be forever, it should sparkle." He opened the box. Inside was a silver band, elegant and understated. "Eliza Monroe, you came into my life like a thunderstorm, messy, beautiful, loud, and somehow you stayed. Will you keep staying? Will you marry me?" She didn't cry. Not yet. She just reached for him, kissed him so softly it nearly undid them both, and whispered, "Only if you promise to waddle like a penguin down the aisle." He laughed, pressing his forehead to hers. "Deal." Before they could breathe in the moment, Claire burst through the lounge door. "Turn on the news," she said, eyes wide. Eliza grabbed her phone and tapped the screen. Breaking. Dr. Bennett Crane arrested in connection with multiple fraud and evidence tampering charges tied to St. Gabriel's Hospital. Eliza blinked, heart pounding. "It's over." Claire grinned. Justice finally showed up. Later that evening, the three of them sat on the clinic roof, Eliza, Luca, and Sophia. The city stretched before them in flickering lights and distant sirens. Sophia leaned against Eliza's shoulder. "Are we a real family now?" Eliza kissed the top of her head. "We always were." And, as night fell over the Bronx, with dreams reborn and scars healing, the doctor and the driver and the little girl who believed in penguins wrote their final prescription. Love in every dose, for keeps.